together made us very attractive for developing a cutting-edge municipal regional paramedic intercept service to provide in this area of Rockingham County. The benefits of that, you have improved patient outcomes when you put the paramedic in front of that patient sooner the better. Reduced costs. Obviously, there's cost sharing amongst communities now. Instead of one community trying to provide the service, especially these smaller population communities, that is now being spread amongst other communities as well. You have a better allocation of resources. You have standardized care across a wider area. You have enhanced training opportunities and just improved coordination and working relationships amongst the towns that are part of the system as well. So what we're looking at providing is a paramedic intercept vehicle station in Brentwood. That would be a SUV, again, not an ambulance, and it would have two highly trained paramedics on it 24/7. It would service the towns interested in entering a intermunicipal agreement with our town. The original 13 towns would have priority, obviously, of coming on board with this system. You can see on the picture there the towns that are currently being serviced by Exeter ALS. So that's the ones that are losing the service. We would also be providing a second paramedic supervisor SUV vehicle located out of our station here in Plastow, which would provide paramedic intercept services to the surrounding towns around us that are interested in entering in that intermunicipal agreement with our town. Kind of a little command structure, what it looks like, the workload, making sure we're not adding too much. That's the purpose of adding a EMS supervisor to this system is now we've obtained another layer of supervision for our EMS division that's being funded through this system and helping manage the day-to-day operations. So the benefits for our town, why does the town of Plastow want to enter in this? Why would we be interested in providing a municipal service to other towns, a regional service? The first thing I think is so important for everybody to understand is our taxpayers aren't funding this, right? This is not being funded by any of our taxpayers. So we won't be a donor town. We won't be paying into the system. What we'll be gaining from this is 24/7 EMS paramedic supervisor in the SUV vehicle equipped here in town. So if you just take that one aspect of it, not the other one that's in Brentwood, but just that vehicle and the cost of the employee, the supervision, the annual expense for that for payroll and benefits is $460,000 that our town is now going to be receiving for free. With those vehicles come all the equipment, so you're looking at about another $154,000 of hard assets that the town will have access to, again, that we're not having to pay for. We have increased probability of obtaining future grant funding for other projects. When you're part of a regional system and you're applying for grants and you explain that you're part of a regional system and either the grant is directly or indirectly impacting a regional system, you typically score higher. So that would give us, again, we've already been very lucky and active in obtaining grant funding. This is going to improve that even more. It's going to help make improvements to our current infrastructure system. Part of this will start helping add to our radio and dispatch system that the budget for this is helping pay for. So that's, again, cost savings to our taxpayers by having a regional system offset those costs. Obtaining multiple vehicles and equipment, again, with no cost to us. And I know the question will come up, if we start adding to our fleet, is that going to cause other line items to increase, such as our Primex insurance, maintenance? All that is paid for by the system. That is part of the budget for the system. So that's already been anticipated. That's already been researched. Any of these extra assets that we take on that has to be insured is going to be paid for through the budget of the Intercept program. The first year startup and operating budget is going to be paid for 100% by Exeter Beth Israel Hospital. So I'm prepared to read a letter tonight or have Ms. Stevens read the letter where they're making a $2 million contribution to this system to get it up and running and off the ground. We also have other individual donors through philanthropy groups that are willing to step up and donate money. So we have the first one tonight. I think it's on your agenda to accept for $20,000, and then I think another one's coming quickly behind that for another $130,000. So there's a lot of support out there to get this system up and going. That $2 million was a commitment arranged through the Executive Council, the New Hampshire Attorney General, the Charitable Trust and Consumer Protection and Antitrust Bureau, and then the private donors. There's a current fee structure that Exeter ALS uses. Like I said earlier, they don't charge a lot right now, but they do have a small fee structure that they have. We're going to keep that in place for the first year. So that'll be some funding coming in through fees charged as the services are used through these towns. Before I go on, would you like to add any to that, or do you want to follow us after I get done?
I'll follow up after you. Thank you.
Sustainability would have to be paid for by participating towns, grants, user fees, and donors after the first year. The town of Plastow will never fund this program. It's not anticipated. It's not being leveraged that we would ever fund doing, which is allowed through the state's RSAs. There's actually an RSA specific to intermunicipal agreements, and it pretty much reads that towns can save money by doing this. They should be doing this for each other. If funding doesn't continue, we'll sunset the program. At the end of the day, we're going to work hard at keeping the program funded. It's highly unlikely that it wouldn't continue funding. There's a lot of key stakeholders at the local level, regional level, state level that want to see this program succeed forever. So there's funding that's, I think, going to continue to come in to help offset the cost of the towns that'll eventually start paying into the system. At the end, if that funding falls through, if the towns don't want to pay for the service, it is not up to our taxpayers to provide that service for other communities. We will not be a donor town, and we will not be funding this program. So we would have no choice but to sunset it if that should happen. Again, I don't think that's a high probability, but that's where we would go with that. And I accidentally clicked off the last slide. So where do we want to see in the future? Obviously, we want to grow the program, demonstrate a regional approach for providing essential services can work. It does work. It's proven to work, and reduce cost to individual towns. It utilized regional grant funding to help with infrastructure needs, such as our radio upgrades and such that we have to do that. It's very expensive to take care of, and hopefully, again, grant funding would help take care of that. So that's kind of like the overview of the program and what we would be providing these other towns, the financial impact we would have, and there's no financial liability that we would have. So I'd like to bring Ms. Stevens to the microphone here. She has been such an integral part in making all this happen, and she's fought hard for her region here in Rockingham County.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Janet Stevens, and I'm honored to represent Plastow and 31 other municipalities, home to 270,000 residents, as the Executive Counselor for District 3. It has been my privilege to advocate for and secure critical funding for Plastow, including, as I was referencing tonight, $1.4 million in grant funding to connect Plastow residents to clean municipal drinking water. And that was at Moongate Farm, their condominium association. $900,000 in grant funding for Plastow's new fire truck. And a recent announcement from the Rockingham County Regional Planning Commission that the Main Street and North Avenue intersection in Plastow has been prioritized for $2.7 million in funding, which will be part of my 10-year transportation improvement plan. So those are some big wins. Tonight, I am here to address a pressing public health crisis affecting my entire district, outline my strategy to hold one of our nation's largest healthcare organizations accountable for their merger commitments, and express my appreciation for Plastow Fire Chief Kudston's innovative solution to this crisis. Additionally, I want to thank the town of Plastow, the select board and leadership for accepting funds for the proposed advanced life support program while a municipal entity is being established to oversee this life-saving service. The termination of ALS services is a public health crisis. On September 10th, Beth Israel Lahey Health and Exeter Health Resources abruptly announced the termination of a 30-year advanced life support program, which has been a critical safety net for all of our communities. The decision sent shockwaves through the network of first responders and fire departments that rely on this essential service. On primary election day of all days, I contacted the Attorney General to demand a review of the $375 million merger agreement between BILH and Exeter Hospital. Alongside a fire chief, I identified a violation of current contracts, which require 90 days notice for termination. Yet only they were providing 10 days notice. Under continued pressure, we successfully compelled the healthcare system to extend ALS services until March 20th of 2025. But the clock is ticking and we remain in triage mode. Current coverage and how termination would impact my district. The existing ALS program serves 68,000 residents across 281 square miles and provides life-saving, specialized care such as rapid sequence intubation, critical for maintaining those patients in need of keeping their airways open. This program is staffed by highly trained paramedics, whom I liken to the Navy SEALs of EMS. Without this program, more than 30% of Rockingham County residents, covering 40% of the county's geography, would lose access to advanced pre-hospital care. The current funding challenges. The sudden termination of the ALS program necessitated a development of an alternative care system at an annual cost of nearly $2 million. This came at a challenging time. Town budgets were already established and could not absorb this additional cost. There was no opportunity to present warrant articles to municipalities for their March town meetings. Federal relief funds, which would have been available months ago, were no longer accessible at this point. Holding BILH and Exeter accountable, I advised fire chiefs to join me in pressing the Attorney General, the Department of Justice, and the Charitable Trust Unit to hold this healthcare system accountable for funding the first 2 years of this program, of this ALS program, which is estimated at $3.4 million. The New Hampshire Department of Justice agreed to seek funding outside of the original $375 million merger agreement and explore funding through the New Hampshire Healthcare Consumer Protection Trust Fund, which holds approximately $4 million at this time, including an initial $1 million payment from BILH as part of the merger. This fund is designed to provide grants to municipalities, making it a viable option for this model. Today, I'm proud to announce that through negotiations led by the Department of Justice, BILH Exeter Health Resources will provide $2 million to cover the initial cost of establishing a municipal ALS program to replace the services previously offered by the hospital. I spoke with the Attorney General this morning to thank him for his leadership and to stress the importance of securing additional funding, that additional $1.4 million from the Healthcare Consumer Protection Trust Fund. I commend Chief Knutson for his leadership in crafting a sustainable solution to this public health crisis. And I thank the town of Plastow for stepping up to ensure that this vital service continues by accepting funds that will be coming in. We are taking decisive action to address this crisis. And I want to bring up that beginning on Saturday and for 24 hours, there was an ambulance EMS diversion at Exeter Hospital. Only those with the most serious of cardiac health risks were being admitted. So imagine a scenario where someone is having a heart attack in the parking lot of Shaw's in Stratham, and local EMS cannot get the paramedic team, the ALS team, and they're not accepting patients. That's a crisis. So having this system, sustaining this system that they can go out into the field to save these lives, we need it. So again, I thank you for your support. We've watched the dismantling of a wonderful community hospital, and I will continue applying pressure through the Department of Justice to make certain that certain healthcare services are not terminated. And we can't overlook the fact that occupational health, which provides care for our firefighters, our police, that is being terminated. So our system is under attack. And I promise you, I'm going to continue fighting to hold them accountable. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Chief. Do you have something else you wanted to add, Chief?
I have nothing else unless you have any follow-up questions.
That's it. Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Ms. Stevens. It was nice to hear all the information come out at once, what it's about. Just, we just had a couple of quick questions. One is the contracts that would be set up with the different towns, because some may come in, some may be added as you go along. Is that done every couple of years, every year, or how was that anticipated?
So initially, it'll probably be just the first year to get things kicked off. And then after we get the first year behind us and we see what the budget might look like for them to have to pay into the system, then we could start looking at a multiple year agreement.
Okay, and how about the SU vehicles to start?
So Exeter Hospital in Beth Israel has offered up $2 million in funding. On top of that, they are going to donate both of the current SUVs that they have and all the life-saving equipment that's in them. So we'll be able to seamlessly take over the service.
Anyone else? Okay.
Thank you very much for coming in. Thank you for the presentation. There's a lot of great information there. I had a couple of questions around how it's structured within the town. So you're our fire chief, and you do a lot in this town. You run our fire department and our paramedic program that we currently have. How is it going to work adding this additional program for you and for our fire department?
So it would actually help lessen some of my workload because part of this program would be hiring specific supervisors for the EMS division of our department. So they would essentially be taking over the day-to-day operations of all EMS concerns that we have. So I'd be able to take some stuff off my plate and pass it on to them and lighten up the workload a little bit. They are supervisors. Their job is to take care of all the day-to-day operations. So I would have little to do with any of that.
And that EMS supervisor would come out of that $2 million, right?
Yes, correct.
Daryl, did you have something?
Quick question. When will the funds be available and when would we kick the program off? If we kick it
So
off?
the Attorney General is the one that is working with all that, and that is on our need. So as soon as we have a conversation with him and say when we need the funds in, we're going to have the funds delivered. It looks like it's going to come in two different pockets. The first funding, I believe, is going to be 1.25 million initially, and then the remaining balance will come quickly after that. But that will 100% be based on our needs for kicking the program off. The current employees there are contracted to work until March the 20th. I really don't want to do anything that negatively impacts their employment, so we would be looking at taking the program over on March the 20th.
March the 20th, and then using the existing employees after that point?
So we would have a hiring process that we would be starting really soon, an application process and a hiring process. We would look at hiring any of those paramedics that want to come over into our system if they want to. If not, then obviously we'd be looking for additional paramedics from any of the applicants out there.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just add? And to answer your question, the $1.2 million would be above and beyond the initial merger affiliation agreement of $375 million. The Attorney General wants them to go above and beyond. The $750,000 would be coming out of the approved affiliation agreement of $375 million.
Thank you.
So we have the initial funding, and I know the chief is really good about finding additional funding when needed. Is there a plan in place or the formulation of a plan to start to look for funding down the road? Is it available through the state through this $375 million so that it will keep the program going? How will this continue to be funded?
Right. And again, as I mentioned earlier, as part of this affiliation agreement, which is common with nonprofit mergers with hospitals, they have to invest within the community. And one of the funds, part of the agreement, was to establish put funding into the New Hampshire Healthcare Consumer Protection Trust Fund. We know that there is $4 million in there now.
Mm-hmm.
We know that a good portion of that is coming from that merger between BILH and Exeter Health Resources. It is my goal, and the chief has heard me say this, I want this ALS system in there first, accessing those funds, seeing that this is impacting my district, to seeing that this merger within my district has been responsible for the funding. So we are, and again, while I called the Attorney General this morning to thank him, and I did pressure him at the December 18th Executive Council meeting, stressing that he had until December 30th. And there's nothing like being in front of the governor and being in the hot seat with that sort of mandate. But he met the goal today. But I thanked him, but also stressed, we're at 2 million. We need another 1.4. We really need to prioritize this project.
Okay.
The most important aspect in the initial funding was to get a program up and going so it continues without any interruption of services. And then that buys some time to get the additional funding in. Like I talked about earlier, there's a lot of key stakeholders that want to see this program be successful and sustainable. So I think they're gonna find a way.
And I would just like to add that I asked about the reporting requirements. Often with these sorts of funds, it could be a reporting nightmare. And the Attorney General assured me, no, there would not be extensive reporting requirements. Just spend the money down wisely for the intended use.
Okay.
A couple more questions, sorry. How quickly would we engage, if we were to vote to go forward with this tonight, how quickly would we engage those other communities about next year? And can you also talk about how it would work for those towns over a period of time?
So I would immediately want to start engaging those towns to start working up the intermunicipal agreements. Again, part of this initial plan to have it funded by outside sources was to make the decisions easier for the towns that are currently in the system. Budget's already been done. These towns trying to find any amount of money would be next to impossible. So we're hoping to make the decision process easy for them to want to continue having a paramedic intercept program, enter an agreement with us that's being funded through the funds that have come in. We would continue charging the same fees that Exeter ALS is currently charging. So it's already in their budget. They're used to that. That would go into the system, and that would be used to sustain it further on out to the next year. As we continue out this year or start this new year and look at what funding we're going to be able to achieve for the next year, then we would reach back out to those towns and say, okay, year 2 is going to look like this. We're hoping to at least obtain 80% in donations and then pass 20% onto the individual towns and slowly start building their budgets up to where they're paying for this service at 100% over about 6 years. For long-term sustainability, funding is the answer, and these towns have to slowly start building up their budgets to get to that funding. They've practically gotten the service for free for 32 years, and they're not going to be able to pay for it 100% overnight. So that would be the plan, is over 5 to 6 years, get funding up. If more funding comes in through donations and philanthropists, that this helps offset that and even moving on down to even more.
I would just like to add that there is private foundation funding waiting in the wings.
Yes.
And private donor funding, former contributors to the hospital
Yep.
would divert their funds to this ALS municipal program.
Just a simple question. I noticed that they look like they're just regular SUVs. We don't have to do any time span like we do with ambulance and everything else. I mean, these are used vehicles, so.
So the used vehicles are at the end of their life, but part of this $2 million budget has some capital needs in it. And the funding in there is to purchase 2 new ones out of that budget. And as luck should have it, we actually found 2 at a dealership that a fire department had ordered, and their funding fell through. There's not as long of a wait for SUVs as there is a fire truck, but they're considered special purpose SUVs. So they're not the same as like if me or you went to the dealership and bought them. They typically come with heavier duty electrical systems, heavier duty transmissions, and alternators and stuff in them. So we actually have 2 that a dealership is holding if the funding comes through.
And what's the life on an intercept vehicle? It's not constantly out there running around, right? So
It really depends on obviously the use of it. I think the current ones that they have now are around year 7. So within the budget, I think we've budgeted for keeping funding back every year. So you kind of get them like on about a 5-year replacement plan.
Anybody else? All right, if anybody from the public has a question, come on up. Actually, is Dean right there, anyone?
Mhm.
So we can get a mic, just get a mic
Yep.
out. Make it easier for you guys. Yeah, you-
have them come up to the table.
let's go right to the table, it's probably easier. So they can capture it.
Ryan LeBrecq, 174 Main Street. Another year and another vast expansion of services that the voters of Plastow will not have the opportunity to vote on. Last year, we were forced upon us a new ambulance service that did not go to town vote. It's a fledgling service. It's 9 months old. We're now apparently the experts in ambulance services in southern New Hampshire. And even though that I'm not saying there may be a need, the town of Plastow doesn't need to be involved in this. We don't need this. It's said that smaller towns are affected. We are the small town. 100,000 people in 13 towns. That's an average of 7,700 people per town. That's the size of our town. We don't have the infrastructure in place to support this. Recently, when we performed work on a roof at the fire department, we couldn't even produce an accurate construction contract other than a signed quote. So we talk about setting up agreements with other towns. We don't even know how to contract construction work, let alone multi-town expansion of this service. Our current service, many of us have repeatedly asked to see the numbers over several months. We were repeatedly brushed off. We weren't provided information until the 11th hour, a couple weeks ago. We have a service that is deemed successful, but no one's provided accurate numbers to prove that it's successful. And we haven't worked through the kinks to even develop our own system yet. Recently, Seacoast Online reported that Chief Knutson took the lead in developing plans for the new intercept service. That was according to the chief of Exeter. Exeter Fire Department wants nothing to do with the service. They said, we have our own paramedics, like Plastow does. So we're not using the service. Someone else can manage it. Why is it us? There's a term in business called stay in your lane. We need to learn to stay in our lane. We're not the heroes of Southern New Hampshire. Where does it end? Should we now take over every fire department involved in these different towns as well? And we can just manage those fire departments for them also because they're smaller towns? This is not something we should do, and it's certainly not something we should do without input from the voters, which is the intention of this board and the intention of this chief, to push this through without a warrant article, without input from the town, other than maybe this public hearing, which this board has not asked one question as to why Plastow, why do we need to get involved? It's all been, well, it's good, we have plans in place with this. Talking to the town manager last week, plans are set in place. The decision's already been made, in my opinion. There's no will we do it or will we won't. It's already decided. This is a formality to have a public meeting, to say we had a public meeting. We're going to vote on it. Everyone's going to vote yes. And again, I'm not against police, fire services, ambulance services, etc. Not at all. My dad's life's been saved on 2 occasions by ambulance services. It's not that. If these towns need it so greatly, I don't know, are any of you representatives of the towns that are affected that want to join this service? Do we have any of these representatives here tonight to say, yes, absolutely, we need your leadership, we need Plastow, we want to be part of this? I haven't heard any of that. They're not here tonight. That's not surprising. We're just going to go do it out, go ahead and push forward regardless. It doesn't make sense. We need to stay in our lane. Still haven't heard what towns are actually interested and said that they would sign an agreement. Don't know if there's any. My question is, why would those towns want to pay another town to provide the service when they can develop it themselves? If there's 13 towns that need this, why don't they get together and develop a system? Sounds like there's plenty of money available to do so. They don't need us. I don't know why we're doing it. I think it's diluting our fire chief's focus on the task at hand, which is protect Plastow. That's his job. That's the board's job. The board should be focusing on Plastow, New Hampshire, not the Kingdom of Southern New Hampshire. We don't need to be involved and stick our nose into everyone else's business. This is another example of continual expansionism desired by, I guess, the board and the fire chief. We want to build up. We've over doubled our budget in the last 4 or 5 years for the fire department. And the goal is to triple, quadruple, quintuple, whatever it is. It's to continue to expand. And if that means taking over other towns' responsibilities, I guess that's what we're here to do. I don't get it. Let's focus on Plastow. When we say that this won't cost the taxpayer any money, government is not good at business. Government is not efficient. Government doesn't understand all the costs associated with what they are doing. I asked the town manager last week, I said, where's the accounting of Chief Knutson's time to date developing all these plans? Well, we don't have that. Well, it's money. We're paying him every day he shows up. He should be working on Plastow issues, not Southern New Hampshire issues.
Okay.
We want to be the town of mutual aid. I'm not against mutual aid, but other towns rely on us more than we get back from everyone else.
All right, thanks. Chief, anything to add to that or anything?
I don't have nothing to add to that.
No, just to say, I mean,
I think the town did vote on the budget last year, didn't they?
Yep.
Okay. It didn't default, right? So they had a choice?
Could I just?
go right ahead, sure.
The termination, the decision to terminate on September 10th could not have come at a worse time, as I stressed. The opportunity to get a request, a warrant in for town meetings, that window was gone. Secondly, accessing American Rescue Plan Act funds. Had they come before us, these once-in-a-lifetime federal funds could have been accessed. But the decision to terminate September 10th, to hold them accountable until March 20th, did not get us very far. And smaller municipalities do not have the call demand that would keep, again, these Navy SEALs of paramedics engaged using their skills. If we do not have an ALS system, there's going to be a void in this level of care across my district from 95 to Route 93. And I applaud you for considering this. We are doing everything to get funding secured from BILH and Exeter Health Resources. This should not be a stressor placed on our municipalities because of their irresponsible behavior in terminating this life-saving service. So I applaud you for considering this.
Thank you.
Where are the representatives of those towns that want it?
You already had your chance. Go ahead, Nolan.
May I add that they all offered to come, but we told them not to because we didn't want it to turn into a circus. But all the fire chiefs from all the towns were more than willing to come.
Easy to say, they're not here. They should be here.
We could have them send you Christmas cards if you want.
I don't want Christmas.
Go ahead, Nolan.
New Year's.
We'll get you New Year's cards.
Cracking jokes now, or should
I know, it's getting, let's be civil. Go ahead.
Nolan Pelletier, 24 North Ave. I'm going to probably pare it down a little bit because a lot of my statements echo those of the former person up here. Someone once said the scariest words is we're government and we're here to help. I mean, that's kind of what we're doing. The ever-ending expansion of our fire department is a little concerning. Last year, like he said before, it was swapped over from private to public without a vote. That was done by, I always say, this board. The origins, like he said, were shrouded in mystery. Information was not given freely. You had to fight. I mean, I've asked members of the board and the town council, and I had to jump through hoops. I had to jump through hoops to get public information. And that's not the way it should be. And that concerns me. And I also found it concerning that the first time that I've heard about this was in a publication. I was reading a publication and I heard about this whole thing. Never discussed before the board, before this came out. So obviously you're having conversations out of public purview and letting this go forward and then bringing it forward at the last minute. Even this meeting, this timing, stuffed in between Christmas and New Year's is a little suspect, if I should say that. We don't need to step up and take care of everyone's problems. Like he stated before, we have a ambulance service in its infancy, and we haven't even seen it through yet, and yet we're looking to expand. And I just want to mention that a grant is not a guarantee. And when push comes to shove, if these other towns start pulling out, we're going to get stuck holding the bag. We're going to have someone in our firehouse that's going to become part of the fire family, which that's what happens. And I understand that there's camaraderie and everything else. So when this thing fizzles out, if it fizzles out, we will acquire a new person on our force and we will be paying that salary, that pension all of that. And that's what I see happening. We pulled out of a mutual agreement with other towns to start our own, and we left other towns hanging. They weren't happy. So I say, please vote no on this. Thank you.
Ryan, is there anything new, or is it going to be the same thing you just said over and over again? Just to make sure it's new, because if not, I know, no, that's the way it goes sometimes. I just want to make sure it's something new. If you want to talk, say something new,
Yes, I want to say something new.
then
So first question I have is, the proposed budget for this service is higher than the budget of our fire department. Seems odd to me, given the fact that it's, I guess, 2 full-time, which is obviously more than 2 people because it's 24-hour coverage, 2 locations with 2 people, yet our fire department budget is less than the proposed budget for this. With that,
Welcome.
go ahead.
You're welcome.
That's fine. So if we can include, if we can cover every town and get revenue in to pay for all the tax liability for the town of Plastow and our fire department and reduce our tax bill to 0, then I'm for it. Or we can reduce our tax bill at all, then I'm for it. It's not going to reduce our tax bill. Our tax bill always goes up. The second question I have, so first responders, 2, one in Plastow, one in Brentwood, are going to cover 261 square miles of area, is what I heard. Doesn't sound like you can get to those locations very quickly with a body in Brentwood and a body in Plastow. Again, I know nothing about this. It's just a question that comes to mind. So to me, it's going to expand to 3, 4, 6, 10, 22 locations, or 1 in every town. It'll expand greatly, I'm sure.
That last slide I talked about was a future expansion to meet needs, but those towns would have to pay for it. So you did clarify that.
What towns have committed to this?
No towns, how can they commit to something that we've not approved to do yet?
What towns have signed a statement that said they will join this if Plastow so generously donates their time to develop and house and manage this for the greater good of Southern New Hampshire? Has anyone written a letter stating that we absolutely need this, we absolutely want Plastow to do this, we absolutely are all in on this?
Yes, they took a vote of confidence on it at a chief's meeting and actually did a work chart on what system they wanted to go with. And they 100% unanimously chose this system.
So that's a fire chief's meeting. That's not the taxpayers of those towns. And that's not the management of those towns.
You asked the question, I gave the answer. If it's not the right answer, I can't.
It's like-minded individuals that don't want to manage it themselves, so of course they're going to support someone else managing it because they want nothing to do with it, according to Exeter. So another question I have in regards to coverage. So first responder, whatever we're calling it, intercept service call comes in. Paramedic races to wherever they're needed. And then an ambulance comes as well?
Typically, the
behind them?
ambulance goes first, and then the paramedic intercept follows it. Now, it all depends on where that ambulance resource is coming from, but for sake of conversation, say Atkinson came on board and they wanted us to provide their paramedics for them. They provide the ambulance and the EMTs, but they need a paramedic. Their ambulance would get dispatched. Once the call reached a certain level of care where a paramedic is needed, then that intercept vehicle gets attached to it.
So our ambulances aren't going, it's just the intercept vehicle.
Our ambulance would function as it does today. You know, we still have some mutual aid agreements with our surrounding towns with ambulances, because we need an ambulance mutual aid.
So
But the ambulance is not going to be an intercept vehicle.
So they operate separately. The intercept vehicle would go, our ambulance stay in-house to take care of this town.
Correct.
Unless their ambulance doesn't respond, then our ambulance goes with our intercept.
Well, that would be mutual aid, right? Sometimes they might have to do that for us.
Yeah, but I think a
That's-
lot of towns,
that's
a
the
lot
way
of
it
towns
works.
know we have mutual aid, so they just let their stuff peter out, and then
Well, I don't know about that, but I mean,
we
I know
consider
I know-
ourselves big Plastow apparently, even though we're the same size towns as all these towns we're supporting.
No.
You know, we're deemed to be the bigger town. I don't know why, just because we have deeper pockets than our taxpayers, I guess. But so an ambulance has to go anyway.
Part of the intermunicipal agreement, the language in it will read that they have to provide the ambulance with the state required EMTs.
And I'm sure
That's
we'll.
how an intercept program works.
I'm sure there'll be open statistics that are readily available and provided to us, not after 6 months of fighting, that'll show how many calls that our ambulances leave the town of Plastow to support other towns where they have an ambulance, but it's broken down in their barn, and it's easier to just let us respond to their calls.
I would assume
So-
the one's right next to that's different. Okay.
The reason that I have issue with all of this is mostly to do with the way it's presented, whether it's the ambulance service, the current service, it's last minute, it's emergency, there's no other option, we got to do this. Woe is everybody, and taxpayer be damned, you don't get a say, we're not bringing it to warrant article, we're shoving this through whether you like it or not, and listen to us, we are the kings and queens of Plastow. That's the reason why I have concern about all these things, because the voter is not being given the opportunity to vote. And if that were the case, and we'd bring this to warrant article, and it was voted in, fine, I might still be mad, but at least the town spoke, or the 10% of the town that shows up to vote. But when we can't even when we know most things pass anyway, we still want to circumvent that and prevent it from going so that we can just make it happen.
All right.
And
Now
it's
you're going back-
continual,
now you're
it's
going
not
back
just
and
this,
repeating
it's
yourself, you said
multiple different
before, Ryan.
things.
You're
And we have a
repeating
board
yourself.
that's friendly with every department in town that
Okay.
says yes to everything,
All right.
and that needs to stop.
Anybody else want to say anything?
Oh, and there should be an enterprise count for our ambulance service currently, so we can tell whether it's
All right, Ryan.
making money, losing money, or what have you.
All right, thank you.
Very-
Something new, I hope?
I did. I just lost my train of thought.
Wait till you get to be my age. It happens all the time. Anybody else? Wood? Go ahead. Yep.
Richard Colquitt, 11 Center Circle in Plastow. I've heard several comments tonight from the chief and from these two gentlemen here. First of all, I believe the chief, when he started, said there is no money involved with this for Plastow. Am I correct, chief?
Correct.
No money is coming out of our taxes. There's no reason for this to be on the Plastow town warrant because there's no money being spent from Plastow. Correct?
100% correct.
Okay, thank you. Second of all, I don't think either one of you gentlemen have any idea what the EMS service is in New Hampshire and how it's run and how it's working nowadays, because it's not working the same way it did years ago. In fact, day by day, it's changing because of the lack of people who want to become EMTs and paramedics. It's lacking everywhere in this country. It's on the news every day. The towns are hurting for EMTs and firefighters and everything else. We are lucky in this town that we have a good chief, we have a good department, and so far they're maintaining their manning to a certain degree. Not nearly as full as it was 30 years ago when I was on the department, but it's still running with mutual aid daily from every town around here. Every time anybody has a call for a structure fire, the first thing they do is ask for mutual aid because they know that they're not going to get more than 2 or 3 people from a town. You have to rely on mutual aid nowadays. That's the story of the fire service and the EMS service. You're just not getting the people out that want to be firefighters anymore. And I can't say that I blame them. They're putting up with too much. The chief has said that this is necessary. I agree with him. Exeter Hospital has been running this this ALS program for years. They go all over Rockingham County and into another county, I believe, up in Nottingham and Northwood both. They travel miles to get to calls sometimes or intercept with an ambulance if they can leave the scene where they are and get going and meet them somewhere en route. I've already said to the chief, I'm not in favor of the supervisor being in Plastow. I think he should be somewhere else. That's, depending on which towns get involved with this, it's going to make a big difference on where people are staffed. Well, the ambulances, the ALS vehicles are stationed. But, you know, there are a multitude of things that vary in this from time to time. And it depends on how long they're gone transporting. You know, they could go to Epping and end up in Rochester at a hospital or in Portsmouth at a hospital. You know, they go miles on different routes. It depends on where people want to go and what their situations are. So it depends on a lot of things. But to keep saying about the town warrant, it has absolutely nothing to do with Plastow's town warrant because no money is coming out of Plastow's taxes right at this point. I'm not saying, I agree. I agree. It's not saying that, you know, in 5 years it's going to have to be funded, but the towns that are using it are the ones that are going to have to fund it, not Plastow. And at this point, I don't see that happening because we have our own ALS ambulance service right here in town. But it's nice to have them here or around the area for backup if needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And the, oh, go ahead, Noel.
Pelletier, 24 North Ave. In regards to Exeter, they're jettisoning this because they're in financial ruin. They're not doing well financially. It's costing them lots of money to run this, and their facility is actually having other issues. So we're basically taking over lots of issues, and we're going to put that on our shoulders.
We're not putting on our shoulders.
We are accepting this. We're accepting this responsibility.
Okay.
We will take this. We will be harboring this. We are shoulders.
Okay, but the one thing, but correct me if I'm wrong, this gets looked at on a yearly basis, right? And once it starts to cost this town anything, then that's going to be it, right?
So how the budget would work moving forward is we have to have the money up front. The town is not going to be a donor town, and we don't even want to float money waiting for money to come in. So every year you'll have the budget. At the beginning of that year, if the money is not there to sustain that next 12 months, we have no choice but to sunset the program or sunset it once whatever's left in the balances run out, obviously. So we don't live year by year from down to the $0, right? There's always money left over in this budget for unanticipated needs. So we would run it down and put a notice out there saying that these towns don't want this service anymore because they don't want to pay for it. We can't find funding for it. So if the money's not up front, we don't continue services. There's no financial liability, if you will, that we're waiting to get reimbursed and, oh, they're not going to pay us now, right? It's up front first.
Okay. And Greg, this would be kept in its own separate account.
Absolutely.
Totally away from town and all that. Its own account, and everything gets paid out of that account and nothing from the town.
Correct.
Why didn't we do that for the ambulance?
I'm not talking about the ambulance.
I was just a question. And I know there's a trade shortage everywhere, but we seem to be doing fine here in town. So I don't think we need to stretch ourselves any thinner. And I think we are putting, it's no financial impact to the taxpayer currently, but we are putting additional strain or workload on our fire department. So that does affect our town. So I would ask for someone on the board to motion to put this to warrant article. Thank you.
Now, to correct that, right?
Yeah, that's totally incorrect. We're hiring people to run this program. So it's actually helping the department take current stressors off.
Right, so yeah, so it's gonna be totally separate, no impact to the fire department, the current ambulance service we have, or anything like that. Ryan, is there anything new? If not, I'm gonna move on.
Yes, he was addressing me directly, so I'm addressing back in response. Government is not a charitable organization. By that method of thinking, if it doesn't cost the taxpayers money, then it doesn't need to go in front of the taxpayers for approval. Let's go buy land and let's develop properties and let's build rental properties and rent them out to recover money. Let's go into business. Let's build a big box store and
Yeah, that costs,
profit from it.
but that costs money though, right? That would cost money. That would
No, we
cost
can get
upfront
donors
money.
for it.
Okay.
This is affecting the town. It's obligating the town. The question I have is, in southern New Hampshire, what is the newest ambulance service? Where is the newest ambulance service located? In what town?
I don't have any idea how that relates to this intercept program,
No,
so I'm going to call point of order.
it doesn't.
and ask
It doesn't
the
have
chair to
any,
move
so
on.
we have no experience is what I'm saying. We are the newest ambulance service in town. We don't know what we don't know. We're learning as we go. There's nothing wrong with that. It's providing a great service to the town of Plastow. I'm not disputing that at all. But somehow we've become the experts of southern New Hampshire on this. What's the backup plan? Let's just say, I know it's assumed that this is just going to pass and we're just going to move forward, and it probably will, but let's assume that by some miracle, this board votes it down and we don't proceed. What's the backup plan? What town is stepping up and saying, okay, well, Plastow is not going to do it. Me, I want to do this. Is there any other town? Exeter doesn't want it. The larger towns don't want it. The smaller towns who aren't here to report themselves.
Let me entertain that statement just a little bit to clarify. He keeps saying that other towns don't want it. There's a difference between not wanting it and not able to do it. We run a totally different platform here in Plastow that no other, maybe one other town in the state's doing, and that's we've separated our EMS from our fire department. All these other towns struggle every single day because they're trying to hire firefighter paramedics. They don't exist. We've started a whole new system. He's making implications that leadership is ignorant and they don't know something until they implement it. That's not how we operate as professional services. We know what we're doing when we start a program. So he has no idea what my resume says. He has no idea what my background is, making these implications of that we don't have any idea how to run a fire department, an ambulance service, or an intercept program is just totally incorrect and irresponsible.
So other towns could emulate what you've set up here and do it themselves with your guidance as well.
So you want this town to fund me going to other towns to be their counselor or their?
No, they can pay part of your salary as a consultant to help them set up the service.
I think
That's for them. It's not for us.
We're getting off of really what we're talking about here.
I think that on the public.
Yeah, I'll give you about 1 minute.
Who will these new paramedics be answering to?
The shift supervisors that we're hiring,
So fire department.
the EMS supervisors that we're hiring, yes.
Okay, so it's separate, but yet it will be handled through the department. So there will be time and allocated to dealing with it. They do answer to you, and you will, orders will come down from you, correct?
Yes, they work for the town of Plastow.
Okay, thank you.
Was there a question there? Or? Okay.
Anyone,
They said there was no impact.
anyone else on the board got something you want to say?
No
So
financial impact.
those supervisors will be funded out of this
Yeah.
package.
And again, I'll clarify, no financial impact.
Okay. And in reference to 2 vehicles covering this amount of space, this is how Exeter ran for 34 years with 2 vehicles, right?
They only use one vehicle.
Okay.
So we're actually adding, right out of the gate, we're adding to the system to try and make it stronger.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I would just like to add, I applaud Plastow for considering this to be able to establish a location where donations can be deposited to start this program. And again, we put a lot of pressure on the Department of Justice to get this done by December 30th. It was not the choice of my fire departments to have this program terminated on September 10th. As I've stressed to the governor and others, without this program, someone is going to die. The shortage of paramedics in this state, presently 275 vacancies. So if you're able to recruit and retain paramedics, it's to your advantage. To have a second launch pad, if you will, it's to your advantage. But again, the whole purpose of me being here tonight is to ask for your approval to serve as the location where funds can be deposited.
Mhm.
We have $2 million. And I will tell you this, that if BILH, EHR tried to renege on that grant, we have it in writing. And I can assure you, they will wind up in court. Thank you.
Okay. All right, we'll close the public hearing at 7:09. And what I'll do is I'll put a motion out there, then we can discuss. So the motion I'd like to make would be to establish a regional intercept program, all expenses to be paid for by participating towns, fees and/or donations, and other anticipated monies that may become available. No town of Plastow monies to be expended towards this program. Additionally, to move forward with steps necessary to begin the process of forming proper intermunicipal agreements, hiring, and other tasks necessary to begin the program on or around March 1st, 2025. To further accept any and all anticipated monies related to the Intercept program for expenditure of program-related items.
Second.
Second by Jay, and now discussion. How do you feel? Good, bad?
I think it's a benefit to the town of Plastow. I mean, we end up with an not an EMT, pardon me, a paramedic right here in town of the highest caliber, or multiple because of the time spans and so forth. We end up with the interceptor right here in town. So if we run into we have EMTs, we have paramedics on staff, but we're also doing assist other towns at the same time. It seems to me that it's not coming out of anybody's pocket here. It's a win-win for the town.
Yeah, and I kind of think that's the big thing, right? It's not any money out of the town of Plastow. That's one big thing. The money's going to be kept totally separate, so that's another thing. So it's not going into the town funds. And the contracting can be set up so it's every year you look at it and to see whether it's worth going forward again for the next year, how many towns stay in it, and all that. So it can be done on that yearly contract every year. And I think, when I look at that, I think that's a plus.
Yeah, so again, just to reemphasize, the contracts would be written in a way that we have to have the money up front. If the town doesn't have the money to pay for the service ends when the funding runs out.
Very good.
So just one more thing, and that is grant related. This puts us in a regional aspect and puts us higher up moving forward. You've done great getting grants, and Susan as well, helping us out with that. But this puts the town of Plastow in a much better situation moving forward. And I think that's being lost in some of this conversation of how much this is going to benefit the town over the span of time. So I just want to make sure people get that into the forum here.
Yeah, especially when it helps with keeping up with dispatch and things like
Right.
that.
We've got antiquated, some of our radio gear and so forth will be patched into some of this as well. So I think it's a win-win for the town. So with that, I'd say, hey.
No. Jay, any thoughts or anything?
Nothing yet. Give me a second.
Carol, any thoughts? Liz?
I just think the extra layer is important. We have a large commercial base up and down 125 that I see our support staff there a lot. And we do have people out on municipal aid. I think the benefit to moving us up to a higher caliber. When we need something, we're going to be able to maybe access something, whether it's roadways, fixing traffic issues or whatnot, is, we're supporting the huge municipal issue. I understand what Mr. Pelletier and Mr. LeBrecq are saying, but we need to do what's best for our community as well as our neighbors. And I think this is just, the first step in making sure our town is able to support their citizens in a health and safety aspect.
Darrell, anything?
It's a win-win. I mean, and when it doesn't become a win-win anymore, we cut it off.
Yep.
Simple as that.
Jay, anything? Or?
I guess what I'll say about it is I agree that I'm gonna vote for this, but these are it's a very unfortunate incident that occurred where we're losing this program, and these programs are of the public interest. And if we have an opportunity to help our neighbors and to help the surrounding communities, and it's not going to cost the town any money through our budget, where it's going to be funded through upfront donations and grants from the state, and not only will it benefit us from, like you guys said, grants, equipment replacement. So there are opportunities there for the town. It's not just a benefit for us, but it's a benefit for these other communities that aren't able to get these paramedics that they might need. So, I honestly think this is, like Darrell said, it's a win-win situation. So,
And the first year is already fully funded too. So that's
Yeah.
a big part. Any other questions, comments? All right, we'll call a vote. All those in favor? Say aye.
aye.
Opposed? Abstained? So 5-0-0.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
for
for
coming.
coming.
We appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens, for all your hard work on that.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
My pleasure, Mayor. Thank you very much. It's people are very scared. They're very frightened, and the calls that I've received since that announcement on September 10th, the cardiovascular, it's a crisis that people have experienced who would not be here without an intercept, without this ALS program. It's off the charts. So again, I applaud you and thank you for your leadership in assisting my district. It means a lot to my residents. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
And all the work you've got in front of you going forward.
I'm very competitive.
I can see that.
No, he'll vouch for
Yeah,
that.
I could vouch for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Safe travels.
Do you
Chief
need
Knudsen.
me for anything else, or? Good.
All right, now we'll back up. We'll do public comment, if there's anyone for public comment. Sure. Yep, all right. We'll give you your 3 minutes. You sit up here now.
Ryan LeBrecq, 174 Main Street. Now that debacle's out of the way. So continually through this board, the planning board, et cetera, we keep trying to limit our property rights or the property rights of the taxpayers of this town. And it's not appreciated. We're turning the town into a homeowners association continually. And yes, I will continue saying that at every meeting I attend. We are not an HOA. We shouldn't be implementing limits on shipping containers, limits on use of lands due to expansion of wetland buffers. We certainly shouldn't be pursuing those things in a manner that it's nonsensical and doesn't even fall in line with requirements of notice, et cetera. And continually, we're not allowed to utilize our properties not as we see fit. I understand there has to be order and there has to be some semblance of rulemaking in society, but we can't have more than 2 signed vehicles with a business sign on it. We can't have shipping containers. We can't live in a camper for more than 30 days at a time. Someone's living in a camper, there's a reason. They probably don't want to be living in a camper. But not here. We can't allow that because that'd look too trashy, even though it could be a camper that's set up nicely and it could be a very nice camper. We can't utilize shelter logics apparently, or we're going to try and limit their use to a half a year. There's 14 of them within 200 yards of my property, including the ones I have. All of these rules that we put in place are ridiculous. And we need to stop trying to expand and just start to kind of look inward and do the things that government is meant to do. Stay in the lane. Stop expanding services. Stop expanding everything. Stop expanding rules and just maintain the roads. Protect the people. The only 2 things that are needed: take out the trash. We don't need all this extra crap that we keep throwing into the mix and all the extra rules and regulations. And we certainly don't need to expand our empire across other towns. Focus on Plastow. Run it well. Stop trying to make it something it isn't. It's a small town with a small tax base, with taxpayers that just want to live their lives and not be impacted by more and more rules and regulations and stupidity.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up, encumbrances. Seeing as he's got to get in before the end of the year, and we're knocking on that door.
That is correct. With the date being December 30th and the like, we have 2 items that we're looking to encumber, which are both projects that were delayed for one reason or another. But the first being the Westville Road and Main Street intersection. We had set money aside from the paving budget and the like, but in working with the state to get design plans, we've just run out of time. But we do have money that's set aside, and we do have a signed contract to start work in the spring to be able to address that intersection. So that's one item. The second item is a contract with the for one of the softball fields, one of the fields, to be able to do some work there. But because of the drought and the like, we weren't able to get the work done, but we're going to be doing it in the spring. So those are the 2 items. $42,000 and $14,750 for a grand total of $56,750.
Yeah, I know the Westville one, I know that was definitely one we were definitely working on to try to get that done, and time didn't work on our side, really, for both of them too, because I know the rec field, it's that upper softball field I believe is where it is. It's the infield portion of it that needs to get scraped and redone. Any questions on anything?
Just like you said, we already have signed purchase agreements for this,
Yes.
and we're good to go.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to approve the encumbrances in the amount of $56,750 for 2024 budget year.
Second.
No discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
That's 500. And up the default budget.
So with the budget being finalized and approved by the board and the budget committee, I've spent time going back through also the refamiliarization of the warrant article, not the warrant article, but the RSA that talks about what can be and not be in a default budget, not grants, contractual obligations, things of that nature, the budget to be the same as prior year with certain adjustments. So with that in front of you by department, I've got a listing of what was approved at town meeting, what the BOS and BudCom approved, and then what the 2025 default budget would look like, which in total for the general fund would be $13,270,845. And what I have, if anybody wants to look at it now or later, is, worksheets to, based on the determination of, the items and the like. So.
So really, the difference between the approved budget and default, it's about 36,000?
About $36,000, yes. And a lot of that comes around because, departments cut their budgets down to absorb the contractual increases of CBAs and the like. And so when you look at a default budget, the contractual increases get included, but we would revert back to the budget cuts that they're proposing. Those in effect get added in. So that's why it makes that amount very narrow in this case.
I just have a quick thing, it's just about a hazard on Main Street, take 10 seconds. At 43 Main Street, right across from the post office, there's a tree there, there's a pine tree with a huge dead limb that's like almost hanging over the street. It's number 43 Main Street. And if I know Maya has, they work on the class sometimes. Like if someone could do something, because if that ever hits a car, someone's gonna die. I mean, this limb is huge and it's dead. And it's at 43 Main Street. So if someone could look into that, that'd be great.
Thank you for bringing
Thank you for coming in.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Probably
you.
have Dan look at that in the morning, Greg? Just have Dan take a peek at it in the morning.
Oh, what's your name and address, sir?
Oh, Jay. It's just Jay. I'm Jay from Plastow.
Oh, me too.
That goes in the minutes, Jay from Plastow.
Jay from Plastow.
Okay. I'm Jay from Plastow.
I mean, it is a state road, but I'll have
Just
our
to take
highway
a-
supervisor take a look at it in the morning.
All right, so from us, you need, anybody questions on the default or anything? I mean, that's pretty close.
That's pretty close.
I just have one question.
Sure.
So you mentioned earlier that it's the previous year's budget with contractual obligations. I noticed that it might be higher if we took the old home day budget of $40,000. So why is that less,
Well, I mean, or other one-time charges.
or other one-time charges? Okay.
Yeah, that is part of it as well. So you would look at, like, the election budget, even though the election budget was higher with 3 elections, in those instances, I made decreases to the default budget because obviously Old Home Day, we had $40,000 for our 275th anniversary.
Right.
We don't have a 275th anniversary coming up again next year, so we don't need that. It's kind of a one-time charge.
Thank you.
So.
All right, so you need a motion, right?
Well, yes, I would say a motion, and then also I would vote on the warrant article for the budget to include this, which
We have it in front of anybody
no,
else?
I don't. Do you have, by chance?
I know we gotta get it off to the budget.
We gotta get off the budget. It was a crazy afternoon. I didn't have a chance.
I'll make a motion to approve the operating budget warrant article, P2502. I believe that's it.
Yes, it is.
To include the default budget of 13 million. It's this number here, right? 13,270, 845.
That's correct.
And to recommend the warrant article.
Thank you, Jay.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 500. So you get that off the budget now, right?
Yep.
Yes.
We
Thank
meet,
you.
I think next Tuesday, the 7th.
Didn't want to meet on New Year's Eve?
No. I offered it. We could have champagne and do a toast.
Yeah,
Or
that would have been good.
sparkling apple cider.
All right, now if we can move on to approve the consent agenda. For the consent agenda is the accounts payable manifest for the week of December 26, 2024, and January 2nd, 2025. Sounds weird. And BOS draft minutes of December 16th, 2024. Get a motion to accept all that.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Second by Darrell. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm going to abstain since I wasn't here on the 16th.
So 401. I'm not sure if anybody had anything going on for our selectmen's reports. I mean, we had the holiday, so it's.
I do. Since we last met, we had our first track meeting. We appointed or swore in the folks that were on the committee, and most of the alternates were there. It was a good meeting. We kind of framed out what we're going to do. Some people have some actions to look into certain things. And then one of the items that came up was to talk to Republic about what a extension would look like. So if you guys are okay with that, I've asked town manager to look into that, to have for information. So
Absolutely.
that, you know, it would be good for us to have and good for that committee to see what it looks like.
Yeah, it's gathering information for that now.
Yeah.
And I guess the only other thing that we're kind of on track is the recycling, as we all saw. On Saturday, Danny looked at it, right? And he said where the cardboard boxes are, everything was okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like the main issue was people just throwing the boxes out there and not breaking them apart and folding them. Is that a safe assumption from what was seen out there?
Judging by the pictures, I would say yes.
And they got emptied today, correct?
They were emptied today. Dan helped Republic get everything loaded up and carted off. So should be back to normal over there this afternoon.
Okay, perfect.
So please, if you're dropping cardboard off there, please break it down and put it in the box.
Yeah, I mean, there's a slot there, and the slot is there for a reason. Just break it down, fold it, and everything will slide right in there. I mean, pizza boxes will still fit in there and slide and stuff like that. So it's at least a few inches, right?
Yeah, it's like 6 inches. So, and if you can't fit it in there, please don't leave it out because it'll get blown away or cause more problems. And so please hold on to it until it's emptied. So thank you.
And upcoming events, the public hearing on the town's operating budget will be Tuesday, January 14th, 2025 at 6:30 PM on the second floor of Town Hall. The public hearing on the school district operating budget will be Thursday, January 16th, 2025 at 7 PM at the Performing Arts Center at 36 Greenhow Road, Plastow. The town's deliberative schedule will be held on Saturday, February 1st, 2025 at 9 AM on the second floor of Town Hall. That's 145 Main Street. Also, there will be a public hearing for school citizens petition warrant article local tax cap on Thursday, February 20th at 7 PM at the Performing Arts Center, which is 36 Greenhow Road. That's what we're into this year. I guess it's all the hearings and everything are coming, all the deliberative sessions.
When's our next meeting?
Next week.
We're scheduled for January 6th.
But we should know whether we're going to need it by Thursday, I hope.
Yes.
So we may or may not, but we definitely have, and if not, we'll do the 13th.
If we need the meeting, what is it going to be for? A public hearing to accept funds for this grant?
I would have to look.
That might
We'd
be-
have to confer. I'm not sure. It would be probably too soon to have a public hearing on the acceptance of the
Oh,
funds.
yeah, we gotta post it.
Yeah, 'cause
So it'd be at least 2 weeks out. Okay,
which would put it in line if we had to on
The
the
13th.
13th.
we need 10 days.
So I would say now, I'd say more than likely that could be it, but we got it scheduled in case something pops up over the next 2 days. But I think other than that, because we got everything kind of, with the budget and everything, that's all done, so we don't have anything to meet on there. And, yeah, we'll see what happens, so I guess that'll be it, we'll play it by there. Here, anybody have anything they wanted to bring up?
I have a question. Is the superintendent and the school board members coming in at some point before deliberative session to talk about the warrant articles?
Are they? I have not heard anything from them.
I think
Okay.
it would be good if they would. It would be
Okay.
nice to hear.
I know, I believe they mentioned it when they were
I
here
thought
back
they
in,
floated some dates, but I wasn't quick enough to jot them down, but I thought maybe they were. I thought maybe they would have reached out already.
I have not.
No, it would be good. I mean, we definitely welcome to come in here and hear about the warrant articles they're talking about.
How about February 1st?
Well, let's invite them in. See if they can be here before town vote.
Can reach out.
Well, everywhere, yeah. Anybody got anything else? All right, we'll close, do we need,
Yes, sir, we do. We have 2 sessions of non-public,
okay,
please.
so.
Public employee and reputation.
All right, so we gotta make a motion to leave, right?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to enter into non-public under RSA 91A3, A, public employee. And C, or are we going to go in and out and come together?
I believe we have to leave and then go back in.
We have to
It's
do
better
one.
to do twice.
Yeah, we're going to break it up. I just didn't know if they're.
Do we get a second?
Second.
Second by Darrell?
Mr. Sway,
Yes.
Mr. Gifford,
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche,
Yes.
Ms. Costa,
Yes.
Mr. Britton.
Right on.
All right, and we will not be coming back after the public, so we will say goodnight at
Happy New Year.
7:35. Want to wish everyone a happy new year. Enjoy, stay safe, and we'll see everybody right after the 1st.
Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year.